Say hello.
I'm sure that any remembrance of me will be measured in the merit of my words and my actions, you know, and as they should be, you know. I mean, you can say and do things that people may not particularly like, but if you do them in earnest and you know, you believe in them, then, you know, as long as they're not inhumane, I guess, then how could you have been wrong?
Turning shit into solid gold. Solid gold. Good enough, I got love, and it's so bad. It's so bad. Good enough, I got love, and it's so bad. It's so bad.
We haven't seen it.
Really?
We haven't seen it yet.
And so what's going to happen is this is going to be...
There's 3 different ones. There's white, black, and gray. So you can get 3 different records.
Got to go get all 3.
Exactly.
You just need downloading.
That's the point. That's why we did it. We can be pricks too. I need to go to the washroom though. That's the rest. You gonna follow me in there? You wanna... Are we that close yet? No.
As a young person, when you were out buying records and going to see shows, you were certainly immersed in being a fan with a lot of bands. Now you're that person that people are writing to. I suppose where I'm going with this is it weird for you?
It's a little bizarre, sure. You know,
Something that you can never get used to?
I mean, I don't think you get used to it. You kind of enter into kind of a, I don't know, I'm reticent to say comfort level about it, but, you know, I guess you become acclimatized to it somewhat, as best you possibly can. I mean, I've always been a reckless person to begin with, so to me, you know, but when you walk down the street, eyes move, that kind of thing, and, you know, or if someone runs across Burlington traffic and tackles you to the ground. Yeah, that has happened, yeah.
Everyone asks you that question, what kind of band are you? Right. And you know, it's impossible to answer, though I did find the ultimate answer. Classic rock of the future.
Well, there you go.
I'm wearing the same grin. I take it all on the chin. I still believe everything that I read. Sometimes it's hard. Sometimes it's harder. Sometimes it's on sale. Sometimes it never fails. Well, I have decided, and she says I'm loving. She says my destiny's turning out all wrong. Now I just sit here and think of meaningful things to say. Simplistic white walls.
To new fans of this band, they may be surprised that the earliest exposure in terms of music for you was folk.
Yeah.
True. A good training ground?
I was raised on it, really. My dad was a huge Simon & Garfunkel, Jim Croce, Don McLean fan. That and big band. So, you know, when I first picked up a guitar... No, actually, to be honest with you, it was just necessity. Because I was sitting in a basement with a guitar. And when you're by yourself and you play acoustic guitar, that's what people classify it as. I wouldn't consider Billy Bragg to be so much of a folk musician, but that's who really more influenced me, you know, to kind of go out and just play guitar by myself to begin with.
When the world falls apart, something's dying place.
Because if you strip away this, all that's left is the words and the guitar.
And the guitar, yeah, exactly. So, you know, it's the same thing. I mean, as you progress as a rock band, you start to do things. I mean, I would be quite honest and tell you that on the acoustic guitar, Hollow Time Bomb probably wouldn't sound very good. It would be very boring. You know, I mean, and then you get to explore avenues of sonics and how you can develop songs and what you can do with too much or too little, or, you know, those are the great headaches that bands go through in their careers. You know, it's all the process of elimination and finding out what works and what doesn't.
I played by myself largely, kind of Hayden-esque-ish, for about 3 years. All over town, lots of railway shows, and the Arts Club. I always wrote songs in the pop rock vein, and a friend of mine just came up to me one day and said, you know, you don't write folk songs, Matt. Get a band. So I did.
Our progression is, you know, usually you start being in a rock band and you go to acoustic later. I just did it backwards. I spent so much time, I think 2 years, trying to make an acoustic sound like an electric live, and I gave it up about 1.5 years ago and just went, forget it. I went and bought a couple electric guitars and, you know, and we just, you know, went for that kind of thing.
I don't even think I really ever did folk music per se. I just think I just did rock songs on an acoustic guitar. It was just a lot less hassle to carry around one instrument and not have to rely on anybody else.
In Alabama hotel room, I reflect on a sweet perfume. Time down, they will not get away with it again. No. When the night comes in, I hope I'm rain.
It's a very strange thing, I think, being a songwriter, because there's two sides to it. Do you want to sell a lot of records, or do you just want to be the kind of band that 20 years from now kids go out and try to, like, maybe you only sell 20,000 records, but kids actively seek out your record because they're like, I would really love to, you know, as an influence. I mean,
Like a Pixies.
or Nick Drake, yeah, or anyone like that. For me, the Pixies were a really strange band in that respect because I thought they were an excellent group. Just an I listen to them this day religiously, and they never. I mean, they had success to a certain level, but never the kind of success that when I listened to them as a band that I thought, who in the world wouldn't buy that album?
Yeah, I just looked at it. I looked at the freedom and the chaos of it and its structures. And, you know, I guess like a lot of bands in the early 90s and that kind of thing, I took from it. You know what I mean? That record very much is a template for a lot of albums that have been made in this decade. And it's not that I've ever really wanted to copy the Pixies. I'm really a great fan of the fact how they build from a bass drums root, and guitars more are something that moves across those instead of it all falling into place, you know.
When you go from writing maybe folk rock-based material for a long, long time, you know, you can have those 12 verses with the same chord progression, and you can do your whole hard rain's gonna fall kind of thing. And then when you start doing it with a rock band, you've got 2 verses, 2 choruses, and a bridge to do the exact same thing. Yeah. So basically, you start trying to put a whole bunch of ideas, packing them into 4 lines. And for me, I've found that I kind of enjoy it in a strange Frank Black kind of way. Words become almost to the listener a little less important, and you've got to almost search for words that cut more than you do when it's just you and an acoustic guitar, because there's some innocence about that that allows even the most sometimes mundane things to come through.
Is there a myth about having a major label deal? I mean, yeah, more people can go out and get it as opposed to it being indie. But I think there's the misconception that there's this huge check, there's limos, there's chicks, there's, you know...
A limo doesn't need checks, no. Process of elimination, that's what I call that. Yeah. Yeah, it's a bit of a fallacy, especially in this country. I didn't really get in it for the money or the limos. No. I mean, I wouldn't be doing this if that were my intention, you know? I've been poor before. It really means nothing in the grand scale of things. You know, they're not going to take a rib splitter and crack your chest apart when you're dead and stuff your inner body cavity with dollar bills so that you can take it with you when you die.
I don't think honest art is motivated by money.
No.
But the money's not nice.
I'm indestructible.
Underdogs is, I think, what we're going to try to call it.
Do you see yourself as underdog?
To a certain extent, yeah. You know, we're from this little back corner in the corner of
North America, and we're going to try and break in the States. And I expect anybody who's trying to break in the States is an underdog.
There's also a misconception amongst Canadian bands that also get a major label in the U.S.
Yeah.
It's like, well, you know, you've reached this level in Canada. Where else do you go? Let's look to the U.S.
Yeah.
Again, there's that misconception there too.
Sure.
And you've tasted that.
There's a bit of a thing Canadians have with needing to validate themselves by being successful south of the border. I don't really know in the last 3 or 4 years that I would ever look at the state of American music and go, you know what, I really want to be successful south of the border. You know, I mean, America as a nation, their best acts have always gone unnoticed. The most influential bands in American history sold very little records, and it will remain so probably, you know, infinitum, I would think. So the fact that I haven't sold very many records down there suits me just fine.
We sort of hold America up as the standard for success, yet we are contemptuous and call people sellouts when they actually do get success in the States.
That's just called typically being Canadian, isn't it? It's like we're held up against the rest of the world and music from America, and people expect us to be something, but that we're never going to be that. You know what I mean? Like, Canadian bands will never be as cool as American bands, or never as cool as British bands. Somehow we get lost in between, and I find that kind of strange and sad in a way. I mean, how many times I've been asked, you know, how do you guys feel about America? Do you want to make it big in America? And that kind of thing. Like, we've even had show reviews going, you know, these guys are pretty good, but you know, they haven't really done anything in America, so they're not that great. And how? You know, I don't live in America. Why am I being held up to that standard at all? You know? It's absolutely ridiculous. I think it's ridiculous that when, you know, especially the media in this country kind of holds you up to this this standard that if you're not great somewhere else, then what's the point? You know what I mean? And all I have to say about that is look who's ruling America right now. So don't go giving them any credit. Okay, because if NSYNC can break the world record for record sales in one day, that's saying something really wrong about America.
We're in the dark days of rock and roll. There's no question about that. We've been talking about this for the last 2 days, and it's entirely true. Rock is at an all-time low as far as, you know, as far as what people, you know, mass consumption is concerned and that kind of thing. Things may turn around. You know what, the pop monster is definitely here. That is, you know, for sure. And there's a lot of disposable, you know, a lot of disposable music out there. Everybody's guilty of it, man, because it's also the light that the entire business is cast in too. I mean, I'm sure people think that of us in some respect as well.
And you just kind of do what you do, and if, you know, if it influences people to do things, that's fine. You know, or if you end up just having a song on the radio that's really big and you want to equate success with that you sold 3 trillion records, so therefore you must be better, you know. You know, I would just have to say, you know, I would have to say that how many bands can you count, you know? Milli Vanilli comes to mind.
Girl, you know.
What was everybody thinking there? Or are they just musical geniuses? Or whoever the hell wrote that? Are they musical geniuses? Or ABC for that matter? Or whoever the hell you want to pull out of the hat who sold, you know, Who Let the Dogs Out? Yeah, there's a bit of genius right there.
Who let the dogs out?
They've sold millions of records too, but does it make them great? No. So I don't really think that you can really register a band's worth on their record sales. I really don't think that you can. I mean, obviously you got to validate your existence by selling a certain amount of records. I mean, if you sell 12 records, it doesn't mean you're the greatest band in the world, but it doesn't mean that you have to sell 10 times platinum to be a fantastic band. Everything on that record. We kind of run the gamut. That's one thing I think on our last 2 records that we did, and one thing we continue to do, which is just kind of have everything at once on a record. I think one of the most important things to us is just that we make albums that people can sit down and listen to from beginning to end.
I've always been a B-side kind of guy myself, right? Singles, schmingles. It's kind of, those bore me. It's the meat of the record. When you listen to an album, it's the things you get lost in. And I always enjoyed that about albums when I was growing up. You know, you go up and buy like the Regatta de Blanc, right? And a song like, say, Does Everyone Stare the Way I Do? right? You kind of hear that song, and of course everyone knows Message in a Bottle and Walking on the Moon and that kind of thing, but you think somewhere in your head, in your own little universe, you're the only person that knows that song exists. And it kind of holds a special meaning for you. So I've always been really captured by moments on records like that. And those, for me, have always been the special parts of albums.
Say hello. Close to me, it's real. Connected to your guts and all your faults are in me, and all your faults in me. Yeah.
Apparitions is still the best song you've ever written?
Oh, one of them. I'd say one of them. I'd say I equaled it, maybe, in my eyes, with a couple new songs on this record. A couple on Suburbia would be up there for me, probably. Born to Kill. Yeah. At the time, I very much thought so.
There's no actual performance footage.
No.
It's just, you don't miss it.
No, that video was kind of haphazardly done because we had a completely different idea for it, and we were supposed to go down to Mexico and shoot it, and it kind of fell apart in the stages, and we were really busy, so I ended up talking to Bill Morrison, who directed it, and we kind of came up with the idea in a day and then shot it the day after that, kind of starting for 2 days. So and we just really didn't want, we've done 2 videos where we play the guitars and move around and stuff, and we thought it would just be interesting to do one where no one sings and no one plays anything.
It was funny because when we got a lot of heat from everyone just going, well, in the Apparitions video, everyone just doesn't, I don't think, realize that you guys are the band. Maybe they just think you're actors or something. And I actually have gotten that a couple times. You're the guy in the Matthew Good Band video, aren't you? And it'll be like, I know, it's funny as hell.
I'm free, I'll be laughing at you, you're laughing at me.
So, Bill, if you're watching this, you are the best director. Congratulations.
We made this for you in Metal Shop.
We've been working all day in Metal Shop to make you this.
I appreciate that.
It's very nice.
I know awards and that kind of stuff, not that big of a deal to you.
Not really, no.
But a lot of the awards you won for Chart Magazine were nominated by the fans.
That's cool. Yeah. I think that's great, actually.
That makes it more special.
Yeah, definitely. I think, when this business is so strange, you deal with it every day, I'm sure, and it's the ins and outs of it. There's so many tastemakers out there and people and critics, and everyone's got an opinion or a voice, and it seems almost when you're planning things or when you're going through the creation process of making an album, you have all these voices talking to you. But it's the people that ultimately decide whether what you do is good or not, or whether they like it or not. It's an entirely subjective thing. And so I always find it strange when you're up for awards, like, say, a Juno or something, which I think the Junos are great. Don't get me wrong, it's a Canadian award, and it's a good thing that we have them. But for me, in some respects, it's really strange because you throw all these people in a room, and it's like taking a whole bunch of painters and saying, well, who's the better painter?
Marking it.
Yeah, who's the better artist? How does that exactly work? To me, that makes absolutely no sense.
Some songs become redundancy. It's just kind of like, like Rico, for example. This is where he shows you the clip so you can equate what I'm talking about. I hate that song. Indestructible. Hate that song. There's plenty of things I don't like.
Because you played them so much?
They're bad, man. They're just bad songs.
You might be saying in 5 or 6 years some of the material on the brand new one, though.
Absolutely. That's the great thing about being me, though, isn't it? I can badmouth it all I want. Actually, everyone, feel free. Go right ahead. Those are just songs that I personally look back on and go, that was not my brightest moment. I'm getting better with it. Beautiful Midnight doesn't have a song on it that I listen to and go, what was I thinking? I like that.
I found me a reason check me tomorrow. We'll see if I'm leaking. Push and push and push till it hurts. My devil's on roller skates.
When people describe you as a brilliant songwriter, people have.
Where?
Maybe your family.
My mom being polite.
I'm sure you've heard that in reviews, maybe some critics. So what do you think they're zeroing in on?
I don't know. I mean, lyrical content's always been a pretty big piece of the pie. You know, I kind of just do what I do, and if people like it, I guess they like it. If they don't, they don't. You know, I mean, that's pretty much all one can expect from anything they do that's artistic.
I'm kind of a voyeur in there as far as, you know, lyrical content is concerned. The world is such a ridiculous place. There's just so much you can say about it, right? And sometimes being literal is a little too dangerous. Sometimes being literal is a good thing. Sometimes it's, you know, a little too dangerous. For the simple fact that, you know, people, they have no openness to a song. They can interpret it their own way, and that's sometimes better for them to do, because if you can apply anything to your own life, it becomes, you know, tenfold.
If you're not a good band fan, you want to get into the lyrics and figure out what's going on inside that head of yours. It gets pretty dark. You're living in a strange neighborhood, man.
I think everything is reflective in a way of your surroundings, right? Obviously, you're right, you know, and things get intermingled with, you know, your perception and other people's perception and maybe the way it really is and that kind of thing. I don't know, man. I'm just not a fan of happy. I'm not, you know? I mean, things like that, as far as making albums go, they come and go kind of thing, you know what I mean? It's like how many love songs can be written, you know? But, I don't know. People I always find, if you're trying to say something to them or trying to reach them on any kind of level, I mean, because as far as being literal is concerned, people are always going to apply it to themselves. They're not going to take, you know, try to figure out exactly what I meant by anything. So they're going to apply it to themselves. And if they can do that, then, you know, my job's done.
Reasons for being easy to pay. You can't remember the others. They just kind of went away. So you're driving to rush out. The cars on the freeway, you're moving like slugs. When you drift off to wake up, do you always hit the brake?
The manifestos. I do one of those every month, and they range from everywhere from like 25 pages or 30 pages to 2. But from what I understand, what I've been told, the numbers is about the first week of every month, about 30,000 people read that, about that. I know it's ridiculous. It's a lot of people sniffing glue out there or something. I don't know what they're doing.
Going through some of the book, what I realized is music is just an avenue for you to have an excuse to write.
Exactly, true. Very true.
Like, it doesn't matter what form, you just need to write.
Sure, absolutely true.
Yeah?
Mm-hmm. I'd say so. By far, this is the most dangerous aspect of MSPI. Attempting to drive a car, work a washing machine, or bake cookies can turn into acts that rival the dangers of walking through a minefield. There's nothing worse for people suffering from MSPI than trying to drive a car, train, boat, plane, or Zeppelin. I'd have to blame it on my grandmother, really. She got me into it when I was like 8 or 9 years old, and I just haven't stopped. So there's some good quotes. There's some from actual emails that I've got. My personal favorite is, "Dear Mr. Good, you are a loudmouth that should be ashamed of not loving Canada. I assume that you have a problem with Canada since you didn't bother even to go and pick up your Juno Awards at the Junos. Canadians are supposed to be known for being polite, but you just give Canadians a bad name. I used to like your band a lot, but won't listen to your CDs anymore because of your attitude. You should remember that bands need people to buy their records, and that it is not in your best interest to make them angry. P.S. Ian is hot."
That about sums it up, I'd say.
Okay. Oh, you like this one? Why don't you just shut up about things you don't know anything about? Our Lady Peace is an excellent band and much more talented than you'll ever be. You haven't put out a good CD since Under the Table and Dreaming anyway.
Okay.
Yes.
In case you don't know what that album is, that is
Dave Matthews Band.
It's Dave Matthews Band.
Yes.
Why would you say?
That hasn't been the first time you've been called the Dave Matthews Band by accident. I'm wondering, have you heard if anyone has called the Dave Matthews Band the Matthew Good Band yet?
In Canada they have. I know that they've messed up on the radio even while I was listening. So that's how we gauge our popularity. See, when we first started out, the Dave Matthews Band was obviously a little bit before, maybe a year before us. So we were kind of mistaken for them. You know, so in Canada now they're kind of mistaken for us. So obviously we've passed them at some point. So that's how we gauge our success, pretty much.
Didn't actually Dave call you at one time and wanted to start like a side project with just you and him, like a duo that Dave...
Don't go there, dude. You know what? It's going to end badly for you. It's going to end badly for you. I will tell you, it is pretty cool to have an army of kids out there that, you know what I mean, that, I don't know, it's not about really that they think of me on a certain plateau. It's kind of like we're all together, you know? Like we're all part of the same group. That's how I kind of look at it, you know?
Let's go to the phones here. Who's this on line one? Hello.
Hi, gentlemen. This is Sarah Louise.
Hi, Sarah Louise. Hey, how you doing?
I just want to let you guys know that a couple of years ago, I found myself in pretty devastating surroundings, and I didn't think there was much else for me in the world. And then I found Ghetto Astronauts, and it made me see just how limiting and ridiculous my situation was. So I got courage, and I became fearless, and I left it.
Rich and me were getting in the van last night. What did that lady say, Rich?
She said she wanted to thank you because your music helped her get through her mother's death.
Which is like the heaviest thing that anyone, you know, I just looked at her and I said thanks, you know? And it's situations like that when people say things like that to you completely off the cuff as you're getting into a van and you're just like, you know what, I could quit now. What more is there to achieve at this if someone's willing to say that to you? You know, not a lot.
And I just want to tell you guys that you touch souls. You do great things for people. And I want you to know that if there's anything I can do for you, like for your soul while you're in my town, or anything, anytime ever, I just want you guys to know that I love you, and a lot of people love you, and you guys are doing excellent work for the world.
Thank you, my dear. Thank you very much. That means a lot to us. Means a lot.
That's worth more than $1 million, man.
All right. Have a good show.
Thanks.
As a perfectionist, do you prefer being in a studio when you can get it exactly the way you want it, or do you prefer being on a stage when...
I think they're two entirely different things. For me, kind of, in the context of that perfection, it's about capturing something in the studio. It's about capturing something specific. And the closer you get to capturing it in its purest form, the more perfect it is, obviously. Whereas live, you know, there's a lot of factors that go into it. Obviously, energy, intent, how you happen to be feeling that day.
Kind of makes us like to rap. You want to see 1,000 screaming fans?
Here you go.
Matt gets inundated with a lot of people coming up to him all the time, and it's, you know, that's a lot of pressure. You know, it's weird. You know, I think it's very weird for him to be in a room and just know that people are looking at him all the time, right? And watching what he's going to do.
How are you supposed to love, you know, how are you supposed to love fame? There's entirely too much ego involved in that, isn't there? I could lose my hands in a tragic drill press accident or something like that. You never know. And anything can be taken away from anyone at any time. You know? That's the way the world is. I mean, and at some point, there's got to be a counterbalance. At some point, you've got to be able to sit back and listen and or say to yourself, you know, you're still you. You know what I mean? And if you lose sight of that, then you're screwed, really. Because what happens if all this goes away? You know, the person you once were is gone, and the person that you have to be is all that remains. And, you know, one day no one's really going to give a shit about that.
Timo, open it up. Open it up, man.
I never got into this for that. I got into it to make records, to make albums, you know what I mean? To make 10 records. To have the kind of career where I could make 10 albums.
Sometimes we get dissed, but, you know, that's cool. Everyone is allowed to voice their own opinion, and if that's the way it is, then that's cool.
Somehow we still sleep at night.
No, it was taken out of context, really. I mean, it was just printed like I attacked them right out of the gates, and I was talking about something that had to do with Canadian bands in America and that kind of thing, and I was asked my opinion, and I gave it.
Matt, if you're listening, if this is a joke, man, we must sit down and have a cocktail, because you are a funny guy. Other than that, it doesn't matter.
There was no malicious intent given. I mean, everybody knows that I don't really mince my words and never have. And, you know, I don't really, I wasn't an attack on anybody's character as a human being or anything. I just was asked about a band, and I gave my opinion, as anyone would give their opinion about any other band. You know, and I think that it is rather unconscionable if I'm just because I'm in this industry that I'm not allowed to have an opinion. What the hell's with that? People are allowed to have opinions about people. If you hate our band, I don't care. You have the right to. Cool by me.
What surprised you most about that whole thing? Was the fact that people couldn't believe that people were saying things?
Sure, it was an off-the-cuff remark that was just made. It was made very prominent and prevalent in that interview with the Calgary Sun, and it took on a life of its own. You know, art's art, man. It's a subjective thing. People are allowed to have opinions, me included. I mean, really, I only ever was interviewed about it one time on television. This is the second time in as many years as I've been interviewed about it. I think that, you know, they probably talk more to OLT about it than you have to me, or anybody has to me, so.
Does honesty frighten people, maybe?
Probably, maybe a little bit, yeah. You know, we don't really come from a country of people who have, you know, that's their thing. I mean, the thing about it is life, and what do you have really to lose about giving your opinion? I mean, no, not only giving your opinion, but just, you know, stating something that you happen to think. You know, as far as, I mean, you can be opinionated about many things. I mean, that was just obviously my reflection on something, and obviously the entire quote wasn't included in what was printed. I went about qualifying my reasons, and to tell you the truth, that was a little off topic as to what we were actually talking about. But, yeah, sure. They always seem, you know, now it's come to the point where I get interviewed by people and they just kind of almost talk about how difficult it was to interview me. You know, almost make it seem like they went through some kind of great ordeal, and there's not really much mentioned about me in it, right? So, I don't know.
I think a lot of bands in this day and age are caught up, unfortunately, with having a successful record and wanting to reproduce what they had done before, and they get caught in a really dangerous cycle where that just ends up being their whole career, reproducing themselves for mass consumption. And you know what? If it doesn't work and the whole thing goes straight down the tubes because I made a bad judgment call or something, then so be it. That'll just be the way it, you know, that's life, right? But at least I did it. I did what, you know, this band, being 4 individuals, did what we wanted to do, and we've got that, so.
Is that a lot easier said than done? Because you're up against corporations with boardrooms of people who are, you know, sitting in on marketing meetings, analyzing art.
Sure. Sure. I mean, this business is too, you know, this business, you dance with the devil. I just prefer to do it with a loaded weapon behind my back. That's, you know, pretty much it. You know, it's a give and take. I mean, we come from a very strange. We were an indie band for so long, right? And we were in charge of everything. Even Underdogs was paid for by we paid for it ourselves, and had a large say in what was done with it to certain extents. But yeah, no, I don't think I have problems with that. I mean, if I couldn't. I don't think if I had a dime for every time I was asked by an American A&R guy or by somebody else to re-record Symbolistic White Walls again and re-release it, I'd be a rich man.
We were independent for a long, long time, and we had some really good success on an independent level. And for me, that was really empowering, you know, and it taught us a lot of lessons. And one of the great things about it is now that we moved into the position where we are, you know, affiliated with a major label such as Universal, we still retained our ability to make our own decisions because we came from that background and gained that kind of respect. So that's helped immensely, right? Because usually they don't stick their fingers in my pie, so which is nice to do.
At this point in the band's career, can you feel the anticipation for a new MGB record?
A little, I guess. Yeah, we're at that point in our career where we have to pretty much buy our own records and scan them in warehouses so we know we look important.
Yeah, I mean, the last record came out #1, so we've had to actually create a new category, the 0.5.
Exactly.
It's like above, so
it's above and beyond, exactly. It's all right. It's all advanced marketing. You need not concern yourself with. It's kind of turned into a bit of an institution, so that's okay. No problem with that.
I suppose where I'm going with this, Matthew, is you have reached the upper elite of the Canadian music industry at this point.
Which means I've reached the upper echelon of Canadian music industry, which I fall 5 feet, I won't hurt myself, right? I don't. That's not really a big thing to be bragging about it.
At what point did you realize maybe you have got...
The air up here is thin, you know. Yeah, there are other people, they're watching and waiting, and, you know, I damn well better deliver. Hopefully we'll miserably disappoint everybody.
Yeah, I think
that's what we set out to do, really.
Yeah, we want to be the first band in Canadian history to actually set out to make a terrible record that is doomed for failure. Because it's never been done, really.
I know in the state of music today, it'll probably sell just dump truck loads of copies. So it's a win-win, really, for us.
At one point you said you hope you never get comfortable with the creative process.
Yeah, absolutely. I think if it remains static, it doesn't go anywhere. It has no room to evolve or change, right? I mean, I don't think that creativity necessarily is something that grows. I don't think you learn to do it better instinctively. I mean, obviously through the mechanics of it, you do, yes. But instinctively, you don't learn to do it on greater levels, but just on different planes, right? I mean, when I did Beautiful Midnight, I sat down and consciously wrote a record about my past. This record, you know, is, you know, I had a year and a half worth of stress attacks and throwing up for 8 hours, then going playing shows and passing out and hitting my head on the floor and that kind of thing. Just a lot of stress-related issues that weren't very fun. And I had the germs of a whole bunch of the songs, and I holed myself up in a hotel room in Whistler for 3 weeks, and it basically all came out of me. We weren't really scheduled to start making a record. But I had talked with several friends, and they were just like, you know, just for your sanity, you better just go in and make this record. Which, of course, ended up setting off a massive chain, a chain of events that led to our actual demise for a little while there. We broke up for a little while, I guess. And, you know, which, of course, was popularized with Dave leaving the band, which, of course, was one of the big things about it and that kind of thing. But it kind of all came to a head one night, I guess, during the whole Dave thing and that. I mean, we were on again, off again, hourly as a group. We had a bit of a sit down. I talked to Dave for a long time, and it was kind of not just, it wasn't a me and Dave situation, it was an everybody situation with everybody, right? And that's just like being in a family. It's bound to happen. But that kind of brought it, you know, to a head with me. It's just kind of like, you know, you get so far with something, everyone becomes so unbelievably egotistical about it that you can't get your own head out of your ass long enough to realize you got something good. You know, and there's a reason why tension helps us create certain things. And it was kind of just, you know, the inevitable conclusion of events that had been set in motion prior.
Page 95.
The handbook, yes.
Rule 15. No one remembers who you weren't, just who you were.
That's very true.
How do you want to be remembered, Matthew Good?
You know, I'm sure that any remembrance of me will be measured in the merit of my words and my actions. You know, and as they should be. You know, I mean, you can say and do things that people may not particularly like, but if you do them in earnest and you know you believe in them, then you know as long as they're not inhumane. You can make mistakes, you can do things you later regret, but if you give up that part of yourself, it's never forgivable. You'll live an entire life just wishing it had never happened, right? So why bother? Because the truth of the matter is you only get to do this one time, right? It's one time around. So make the most of that one time around you've got.
You know what I realized? You take away the O, and what do you got?
It's God. Oh, God. Take away the D, and what do you got, right?